world, welcome to GameSpot's live video review for Capcom's Dead Rising for the Xbox 360. I'm senior editor Jeff Gerstmann, and we're here with Alex Navarro, who just spent some time reviewing the game, right?
Yeah, little bit of time. A little bit of time with the Dead Rising.
Well, why don't we get things started here by taking a look at the standard video review that you shot, and we'll take a look at that, and then we'll come back, and we'll be back with your questions after this.
Dead Rising is a new zombie action game from Capcom for the Xbox 360. And as most people probably know, Capcom is the maker of the Resident Evil series. The series in zombie killing. Like, that's all you've really had over the last several years is Resident Evil, this and that, whatever. The problem with the Resident Evil games, though, is that they're all about jump scares and mood and atmosphere and all that. Sometimes you just want to take a chainsaw to a zombie. Sometimes you just want hella zombies running around and you don't have to worry about, things jumping out of this or whatever. You just want to kill zombies. Well, that's what Dead Rising lets you do. Dead Rising is just a straight-up action-adventure game where there happen to be hundreds and hundreds and almost thousands of zombies wandering around this giant shopping mall, a la George Romero's classic Dawn of the Dead film. You get to kill these zombies basically using everything that's in the mall. Everything is a weapon. You can just kind of murder these zombies mercilessly, just using anything. Just the most brutal, horrible, bloody, nasty, angry-looking weapons. Everything just busts apart and slices and dices, and it's bloody and it's horrible, and oh god, it's great. The basic setup for Dead Rising is that you are a freelance photojournalist named Frank who sort of spent his life covering wars and atrocities and horror and all that fun stuff. You get a tip that there's something going down in this tiny little mountain town. Roads are blocked off by the military. No communications can kind of go in or out of the town, and that's super suspicious. So you think, well, this is a great opportunity for a story. So I'm going to hire this helicopter dude. He's going to fly me into the town. I'm going to see what's going on. And then you get there, and there's zombies. There are zombies everywhere. They are eating people. They are just knocking over buses, setting fires, blowing stuff up. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. It's great. Basically, you have 72 hours, and you have to survive that amount of time. A lot of the game's story missions are sort of put on this timer that you have to be in a certain spot in the mall at a certain time. Otherwise, you lose the case. You're done. You don't get any more information. The story mode's over. You have to reboot from the last save. It's kind of an interesting structure in that, being on time is not necessarily, inherently a fun gameplay mechanic, but sort of have to progress the story at the natural pace to get to the 72-hour mark is cool. Except for the fact that the save system is awful. The save system in this game is borderline broken, and it's punishing and mean-spirited, in that you only get one save in the entire game. There are very few autosaves anywhere in the game, and if you save yourself in a bad spot where you can't get to the next story mission in time, you're host. You're done. You have to start the game over again. There is an option to save the game and quit and start over with all of your previous abilities and, your level and all that stuff. So, you're a lot stronger than you were at the beginning of the game. Still, it pretty much sucks that is even a problem, like that is something you would have to do. This isn't by itself, by and large, a game you will want to play over again naturally. You don't need this sort of artificial lengthening of the game to want to go back and do all this other stuff again and again and again. Save system caveat aside, the structuring of the game is pretty interesting, especially considering that the zombies in the game are almost incidental to the progression of the storyline. Like, they're more just there to sort of impede your progress as you go through these missions rather than being like a central focus of any of the specific missions. Most of the missions in the game revolve around the other people in the town that are still alive. There's a lot of weird interactions with people that aren't zombies, and most of the game is about people that aren't zombies. It's just that there are zombies there in the mall trying to stop you from interacting with the people that aren't zombies. So when you do kill zombies in the game, it's pretty much a riot at all times because there's so many just bizarre ways to kill zombies in the game. Like, of course, you get the usual guns and bladed weapons and whatever you can use to slice those zombies, and that's awesome by itself. But then there's also, blunt weapons that just ran, like, potted plants and lead pipes and baseball bats and all sorts of stuff like that. And then it gets really weird, because you get stuff like, you're throwing soda cans at them or CDs like ninja stars. It's not super effective, but it sort of knocks them back. It's kind of a neat thing. All the stores have a whole bunch of random weapons that you can just find at any given time. The actual feel of using the weapons in the game is awesome, and that, it's like the bigger weapons have this just real huge, like, just massive destruction feeling to them. Likewise, you got a little weapon, like something that just kind of does a little bit of damage, you'll see them react totally differently to that kind of thing. And all of that is made just a whole lot better by the audio in the game. Like, the Foley work in Dead Rising is probably some of the best you will hear in any game this year, because it's just like the sounds of each individual weapon just like, contacting with a zombie's body are so perfect, it is just delightful. So ultimately, Dead Rising really just is a great game. It manages to sort of scratch that kind of visceral itch that you just want in a zombie sort of action game, where you just want to cut the hell out of angry, nasty zombies. You want to do horrible things to zombies, and it lets you do so many different horrible things to zombies that it's impossible not to love on that level. It's got problems, but a lot of those problems are really overshadowed by just how silly and fun the game can be. And if all you really want is just an excuse to kill zombies in a huge variety of ways, and there's also a story and some plot and conspiracy and all that and whatever, that's actually pretty good too, cool. Dead Rising is very much the game for you.
All right, we are back. Now, you talk a lot about the horrible things you can do to zombies, but I put it to you, there's no such thing as a horrible thing when it comes to zombies. They're zombies. You have to take care of them. Yeah. You have to put them out of their misery.
Yeah, you might be right about that. I mean, I say the horrible in the sense that, the aftermath, the
sure.
things like just the blood and the guts and, just all that nastiness all over the place.
Everything that happens after the zombie apocalypse.
That's horror, man.
Okay.
That is horror.
All right, well, let's turn to questions. Keep them coming in. We'll start here with Adam from Cleveland. Wants to know, does the save system seriously hinder the game? You talk a lot about how you can only have one save. How does all that stuff work, and does it really come up and get in the way a lot?
The thing about the save system is that, basically the structure of the game is fine by itself. Like, it's kind of annoying maybe at times to have to be places on time and do stuff, like on such a stringent schedule. But it would be okay if there were just multiple saves. And
right.
Because it's very... I wouldn't say it's like it's overly easy, but you can very easily back yourself into a corner by saving the game in a spot where you just don't have enough time to get to the next mission, which then just sort of eliminates your ability to get to any of the case files after that, and you have to either reload for the last save or start the whole game over again.
Right. So how does that work? Tom from San Francisco says, if you miss one of the cases, do you have to restart the game? And what happens if you keep playing?
You can keep playing. I mean, I'll be honest when I say that I did not just sit around and keep playing, but it is mandatory to complete the storyline to have those case files going. They're an integral part of the flow of the game, and you have to go through them.
Uh-huh.
So, theoretically, you could just stand around and kill zombies all you want after that, but you need to do the case files to complete the storyline and, get to the truth and all that stuff.
Right. Okay, so how hard is it to get to the truth then?
It's like if you play the game fairly carefully, you don't go around and do, because there are tons of side missions that'll just pop up in between, the various story missions. And
right.
If you don't spend all your time just, going and doing all these side missions and just not really paying attention to because there is a timer that counts down and lets you know how much time you have left to get to a mission.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't just let that run out and, pay close attention, you can get to those missions just fine. You'll get through the game just fine. The missions themselves can be pretty challenging. There are a lot of fairly difficult missions within the storyline, and even a lot of the side missions are pretty tough.
Uh-huh.
But none of it's impossible. You start figuring out the right strategies for the various boss fights and the rescue missions and that kind of stuff. And it's going to probably take you at least a few playthroughs of most of the missions.
Okay. Justin Ripley in Kingston wants to know what's the total time you'll need to wait until you're rescued. It's like 72 hours, right? But what's that translate to in game time?
Well, the 72 hours, is obviously not really 72 hours because that would be a really long ass game.
Yeah.
I don't know what the exact time progression is, but I mean, I'd say if you were really awesome at the game, managed to get through every mission the first time around, didn't dawdle around doing stuff and whatever, you could probably get through the 72-hour mode and the sort of bit of story that kind of comes following that, which I'm not going to get into because that would just spoil the whole thing. In about 10 hours. But, most people are probably going to take more like 15 to 20 to get through a lot of this stuff. Because, again, it is pretty challenging, it's tough, and it's fun.
And then conceivably, if you wanted to see the entire game, you'd then have to go back through and just maybe focus on only the side missions or something like that, right?
Totally. Because, you can't only focus on the side missions if you want to get through the game. Because the side missions kind of tend to dry up, too. But,
okay.
It's like you can go... basically, you're going to want to play through the game multiple times to get everything. Because there's a bunch of different endings to the game. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of go through and do stuff. And doing the side missions actually gets you some little different pieces of the story. So there's things to fill in, gaps to fill in, and a lot of the achievements you're just not going to find the first time through.
Okay, yeah. So how hard would you say the achievements are?
They're all 20 points.
Yeah.
And they equal up to 1,000. So there's
50 total.
So there's 50 total achievements in the game. Some of them are pretty easy. There's a few, a lot of, ones where you just based on the photography stuff where you just kind of have to wander around and, take photos of people you've rescued and stuff like that.
Right.
There's some easy stuff, beat a couple of bosses, but then there's a lot of really crazy ones kill 53,000 something zombies, which is the entire population of Willamette, Colorado.
Okay, so let's give that some context. In the course of finishing the game, how many zombies would you say you killed? You didn't necessarily go out of your way to kill them, right?
In the course of finishing the game, I probably killed... I spent some time going around killing zombies because I, wanted to.
They deserve it.
Yeah, they absolutely deserve it. They're mean-spirited little buggers. They're mean.
Yeah.
But I would say I probably killed somewhere around 3,500, 4,000, somewhere around there. Maybe more than that. I don't remember the exact number.
That's a lot, but not...
That is not 53,000
That's
zombies.
not even close.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
That's bananas. All right.
Yeah.
Justin Clappa in Surrey wants to know, is there any online or multiplayer? This is strictly a one-player game, right?
Yeah, this is just a one-player game. There is no multiplayer whatsoever, which is kind of a bummer because a co-op version, some sort of co-op missions or something, that would have been really awesome. But
there are leaderboards in there, so you can kind of compete with people online.
Yeah, there's a score that kind of comes along with your profile, and there's a leaderboard for that stuff. But you don't have to necessarily there's no real multiplayer component at all.
Okay. Camille in Miami wants to know, what's the best aspect of the game? What's your favorite part about Dead Rising?
My favorite part about Dead Rising is just killing zombies, dude. It's the thing about it is that the game sets it up so nicely for you just to constantly have access to weapons and kill zombies. It is not hard at all to get just a random object from anywhere and just bludgeon, stab, shoot, do all sorts of horrible things to zombies. And the weapons are just kind of hysterical. So
well, yeah, let's talk about the combat for a bit. Spencer Guy in Matthews, North Carolina wants to know, what do you think the strangest item in the game is?
Oh god, the strangest item? There's some really kooky stuff in there. One thing I'm particularly fond of is the Mega Buster. Which is actually a replica of the Mega Man Buster gun, and I think there's actually a whole Mega Man suit in there. I didn't find it, but I found the gun, and it just shoots tennis balls.
Cool. How effective is that against the average zombie?
Not super effective. It knocks him over. It ain't gonna kill him unless you just keep hammering at him.
It'd take a lot of tennis balls to kill a zombie.
It would take a lot of tennis balls to kill a zombie. But and there's stuff like that. There's do you remember that game, The Adventures of I guess Tron Bonnie or something?
Yeah, Tron Bonnie, yeah.
The helper robots, I forget what they're called.
Servbots.
The Servbots, yeah. They have the masks of those things all over the place, and you can just in the toy stores.
Right.
So you can just grab those things, and basically instead of bludgeoning a zombie with it, you just put it over its head and let it wear it, and it just sort of wanders around aimlessly and doesn't really know what's going on. And
nice.
It won't attack you anymore. So there's a lot of stuff like that in the game.
Crazy. Abhishek in Minneapolis wants to know how many types of guns are there, and how satisfying is the shooting? Is there a variety of guns in the game, or is it pretty much just?
It's not a huge variety of guns. I mean, there's like a basic handgun and a basic SMG and like a basic shotgun and a sniper rifle, and there's some other stuff you encounter after that. And I would say the shooting's pretty satisfying. It's a little weird because early on in the game, the aiming mechanics feel a little clunky at first, but once you sort of get a feel for it, it can actually be really satisfying, especially with like the shotgun, which just will blast huge groupings of zombies away and whatever. And the sniper rifle is actually really effective. So
cool. So now there are other modes in the game that come along.
Right. There's the, there's a 72-hour mode, and then there's the story bit that kind of comes following that is actually its own mode that you unlock by getting through the 72-hour mode.
Okay.
And then there's also an infinite mode, which is actually like a survival mode.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions asking specifically about how infinite and survival mode works.
It's just a survival mode where you can kind of like just fight zombies, and your health is just going down at all times.
Okay, so you kind of have to always be looking for orange juice or whatever.
Yeah, basically that's the gist of that mode. So.
Crazy. Cliff in Richboro, PA wants to know, does Dead Rising reference a lot of different zombie movies? Do you find a lot of references to, and also like other Capcom properties?
Right.
Is there a lot?
Well, it's in a mall, so it's it's kind of already one big tribute to Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
It's got that whole thing going on. I would say it's more akin to the Dawn of the Dead remake because it doesn't really have a whole lot of that that commentary subtext going on that the original Dawn of the Dead had. But I mean, there's a little bit in there. Like there's some interesting commentaries on American society in there, like there's gun laws and vegetarianism and all sorts of other really weird stuff in there. But,
crazy.
But as far as like references to, there's a bunch of random references to Capcom properties. Like there's a store, like there's a shop in the demo that I'm sure most people have already played. It's called Jill's Sandwiches, which
that's pretty great.
I'm sure people will get immediately. Like your watch is a Mega Man brand watch, and obviously there's the Mega Man suit and the aforementioned
the
Servbot mask and all that stuff. And there's some other little things I'm not going to spoil for people because it's more fun if you find them yourself.
Right.
But yeah.
Ross Busby in Scotland wants to know, are there any moments in the game that'll make you jump with fear? I mean, a lot of people are wondering if this is like comparing to like the Resident Evil games where they're kind of like scary and stuff. Is this more
so what
lighthearted?
You're saying, are there any cat in the window scene kind of moments?
Yeah. Is there like stuff jumping out?
That's business lingo right there. That's scary movie business.
Sure.
No, not really. The game is not really geared towards scares at all. I mean, it's like there are moments where it sort of kind of tries to play that a little bit, but not really. It doesn't really commit to it. It's more just sheer numbers. It's sheer volume. It's the number of zombies in the game. It's the fact that, as time goes on, the zombies just keep getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and there are just so many of them.
Right.
And, at night they get more aggressive, so they're actually a little scarier looking because their eyes start glowing all red, and, they're meaner.
That's messed up.
That's really messed up. But then also there's, there's also these psychopaths and crazy people, and it's kind of hard to really be scared by a game where you're fighting an evil clown that juggles chainsaws. Like that's just not the vibe they're going for. It's more it's absurd, but it's also very campy and crazy and weird. Crazy.
All right. Well, Jordan in New Milford wants to know, how does the frame rate hold out throughout the game with all these zombies on screen?
Very well. The frame rate in the game is, I would say, like as far as just holding steady, it's one of the better Xbox 360 games at that, especially with the number of characters on screen at once.
Right.
There are a couple of spots where it tanks, and it's mainly with just really big ass weapons, like when you're just doing a big swipe at a whole bunch of guys. Like that'll kind of make things slow down a little bit. But beyond that, it really holds steady very well. It doesn't. Yeah, I was very impressed by how the technology of that game runs.
Right. Okay, let's take it back to a little more of the gameplay stuff. Arno in Paris wants to know, how does the whole picture system work? Are there any way to save the pictures that you can view them later, or what? Is it just like in the game? Or?
Yeah, it's basically, you have this camera, you're a photojournalist, and, so you're always carrying this camera around with you. And the thing is, The pictures themselves are kind of an incidental part of the game almost, because like you're just, you don't have to do them for the most part. There are a couple spots where it's like it really helps out missions or whatever if you use them, but mostly you're just using them to get points to help Frank level up and kind of, just boost his abilities and stuff. And
how does the ability boosting work? What, do you just get more moves or more health?
Yeah, you get more moves, you get more health, you get more inventory slots, that kind of stuff. Basically, he just becomes a lot more powerful. And as far as like the pictures themselves go, you can take various types. Like there's like take scenes of horror, scenes of drama, scenes of erotica, which is basically taking pictures of zombies like not wearing a whole lot of clothing. Like there are female zombies wandering around in like fishnets and stuff.
Very erotic.
Very erotic. Yeah, no, that's actually really gross. But because zombie erotica is not something I'm too into personally. I don't know about you.
I get into it, man. Adam in Sweden wants to know, how interesting is the main character? What's the deal with Frank?
The deal with Frank, I've actually read a lot of people saying they hate Frank, and just, based on what they've seen in the trailers and stuff and whatever. And you know what? Frank's actually kind of a likable guy.
Cool.
I mean, he's kind of you get the feeling he's kind of a dimwit, doesn't really think too far ahead about these things. It's like, okay, you're flying in via helicopter, you see a bunch of people eating other people on the streets. Why do you want to hang out in this town for 3 days? What person is right in the head?
Sounds like a party.
Like that? Maybe it's a party, I don't know. But so basically, he's a little dumb. He kind of rushes into things, but he's also, he's a fairly standard hero. He's not irritating. He's fine. He's actually, the voice actor who plays him is pretty good. Mm-hmm. He gets the character across pretty well. It makes him somewhat endearing at least. So yeah, I like Frank. I think Frank's cool.
Cool. All right. Jean in Quebec wants to know, how painful are the loading screens? Is there a lot of loading, or the area is large with no loading?
The loading only really comes into play when you enter a different section of the mall. And there's several sections of the mall that you go into. They're broken up into different plazas, and like there's the big park in the middle and that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And when you walk from one plaza to another, there's about, I don't know, I mean, for me it was like maybe 10 seconds. 12 seconds at most for most of those. And the thing is, you don't need to travel between plazas a ton in a row. Usually when you go to a plaza, you stay there for a while and do stuff, and then you don't go back until the next mission or the next section of that mission. And it's real intermittent. It's not very long. I never really ran into any hugely long load times, and it just wasn't even a factor for me.
Okay. Kevin Bolton in Dublin, that's Ireland, asks,
yes.
Does the mall environment become boring or repetitive after a while? It's a mall full of zombies, right?
Yeah, it's a mall full of zombies. I love the mall. I think the mall was like the greatest setting they could have possibly come up with. And the thing about the mall is that it's just pristine looking. It's the way a mall is supposed to be. It's totally bland and just like bright colors, cheesy theme restaurants, and just all it's done to just try and make people happy. So it's just like this great contrast that there is horrible zombie death going on all around this really happy place. Mm-hmm. Like the only thing that would have been better is if they'd done like a theme park ripoff, like a Disney World kind of thing. That would have also been really great.
Uh-huh.
But no, I think the mall is great. I never got bored by it. So
cool. Nate Foster wants to know, what's your favorite weapon to use in the game? We talked about the strangest weapon, but what?
I'm very partial to the bladed weapons, and I'm specifically very partial to the chainsaws, which you may have seen on screen there just a second ago. There's a couple of different types of chainsaws. There's one that like straight up you don't even have to like swipe at anyone. You just run around with the chainsaw in front of you and you can do damage, or you can do big clunky swipes where you're just swinging everywhere and you might actually accidentally kill people that are good in your path. And then and there's also like some smaller ones that are do more damage, are easier to hold, and that kind of stuff.
Cool.
I love the chainsaws.
Cool. All right. Last couple of questions here. Sebastian in Denmark wants to know, how are the boss battles? I mean, how do you encounter a lot of bosses in this game, or are there just a few? Are they memorable?
It's interesting because like the definition of boss battle is not real clear in this game. Like there's a lot of battles against these characters called psychopaths, and some of them are real not tough. Like there's just a guy, like for instance, there's a guy that controls a gun store in the game. It's like this redneck hick who's sort of taken it over, and all he does is just kind of wander back and forth, and you just shoot at him. But then there's also like much more involved fights against characters like this insane clown that juggles chainsaws and has gone crazy because nobody laughs at him anymore because all the zombies came and scared all the people away, and it's really
that's frightening.
Yeah, it's really bizarre stuff. But yeah, I mean, like the more involved boss fights are awesome. The less involved ones, they are what they are. There's nothing to say good or bad about them. They're just kind of there. So
cool. All right. Erez in Israel wants to know, can you speak more about the variety of the missions in the game? I mean, are you escorting survivors? Are you going out and kill 20 zombies? Or what's the
There
general...
is none of the there's really none of the there's none of the go kill 20 zombies stuff. It's like there are collection missions where you have to go get stuff. Like there are a few fetch quests in the game. But as far as the mission variety, it's like most of the side missions are rescue missions. They're escort missions where you have to go save people from getting, eaten horribly by zombies. And those make up the bulk of the side missions. There are a few story missions that are that way too. There's a fair amount of boss fights against the psychopaths and some other sort of integral characters in the story that involve shooting and stabbing and all that kind of fun stuff against people that aren't zombies. And that's the bulk of it. There are a few other little varieties of missions here and there that are kind of cool, but for the most part, that's basically the variety of it.
Cool. Marcelo in Stamford, Connecticut, wants to know, how do you save all 50? Where do you bring these survivors? Is there a safe spot in the mall?
There is a security office near the roof of the mall that you sort of go to right at the beginning of the game, and then it's sort of people sort of start to congregate there, and they weld the doors shut, and basically you go in and out through the air ducts to the roof that kind of takes you into this warehouse area that you can kind of get through. So, but there are also random shortcuts through the game, little areas that you can get to. But yeah, mainly the safe house is just this security room, janitor's room kind of area up near the roof. And there's rooms where you can basically store your survivors.
Cool. All right. Last question here from Mike in Kissimmee, St. Cloud, Florida. Wants to know, are the weapons infinite? Do they eventually break, run out of gas? Once you have a weapon, do you just have it forever?
They eventually break. I mean, there are ways to increase the amount of time you can keep the weapons. There are skill books you can pick up at the various bookstores and areas of the game that let you hold on to bladed weapons 3 times longer and that kind of stuff. But they do all eventually break. They're not forever weapons, and it's especially a lot of the bigger weapons actually get broken easier, it seems, at least early on. So, you tend to find yourself using the smaller stuff like baseball bats and free weights in this case, where you're just busting zombie heads open with that. Oh, that's gross. But yeah, so
Jesus.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of brutal, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. So, in short, it sounds like you're recommending this game.
I would, in fact, recommend Dead Rising, specifically to the zombie connoisseur. Those who are a little more highfalutin in their zombie tastes. Those who would prefer a zombie game that just lets them do the finer things in zombie killing. Because it is full of that. It is a delight.
All right, Alex.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
I had trouble saying that with a straight face.
Yeah, all right. Well, that will do it for our live review of Dead Rising. Thanks to all of you out there for submitting your questions, and we'll see you again on the Spot this Thursday.